It's an age-old game, and one local man wants to bring its popularity back to the area. John Cordisco hosted the 4th annual Broome County Chess Championship this weekend at Cordisco's Chess Center in Binghamton. About a dozen chess enthusiasts joined the tournament, vying for a piece of the prize money, a trophy, and of course bragging rights. This year, David Gogan took first in the open section, and Daniel Dudley took first in the reserve section. Cordisco, who actually grabbed second in the reserve section, says chess is more than just a game.
If you're a player, it's hard to describe. There's a quote that I use all the time that if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right.
Cordisco holds the tournament each year in memory of his brother, Francis Cordisco. He hopes to bring back the love of chess to the southern tier, where it once thrived in the 70s during the Bobby Fischer glory days.
Chess has become a way of life for these avid players. The 4th annual Francis Cordisco Memorial Chess Championship drew about a dozen men from across the state this weekend to compete for a $1,000 prize. Competitors say although it doesn't sound or look like much is going on when you're watching, they say the players are actually burning calories from thinking so hard and are also learning skills that will help them succeed outside of this weekend's tournament.
It helps you with your concentration, it helps you make decisions, and it helps you to realize that actions have consequences, both good and bad.
Chess in the grammar schools is what really should happen a lot more. And it engages the mind in ways differently than, say, computer games.
Cordisco's Corner Store hosts monthly tournaments. There will be another.
Hi folks, John Cordisco back again with another great chess video for you. This is from round 5 of the Broome County Championship Francis Cordisco Memorial that was played on April 13th and 14th. This is the game that I played in the 5th round. I'm in the reserve section, which is the under 1700. My current rating is about 1580, 1575. It's an interesting game. I mean, not a lot of excitement going on in this one, but it was getting towards what they call the money round, which is the next to the last and last round. And I'm white. My opponent is Steve Cashman. He's a gentleman I've played dozens and dozens and dozens of times in tournament games. He's local here. He lives right outside of Binghamton. And gosh, we played, I can't even begin to tell you how many tournament games, and one of us usually wins. So usually the games are decisive. So if we can continue. I have white, Steve has black. He plays his normal Sicilian. Knight f3, a6, c4. I've been doing that a lot lately. Sometimes when the a-pawn doesn't move, it transposes into a English, or I believe it's pronounced Marcosi bind. It kind of causes a problem for my late squared bishop when the d-pawn goes to here. My late squared bishop is kind of hemmed in for a while, but I see it's a little easier to play. Does lead to some interesting positions if you push the pawns on the king side, as I did in the game I played in the Eastern Team Championship last year down in Parsippany, New Jersey. I used this similar opening and I beat almost a 1900 player. That was a game I was pretty excited about. It's a game that I show here with a computer screen in an earlier video, as well as what I call a live video, where it shows myself moving the pieces. He went a6, I went knight to c3, b6. A little bit surprised me a little bit, but if you go to look at it, I mean, his light squared bishop is kind of hemmed in. These two pawns are in the way. He had moved the e-pawn to let his dark squared bishop out. So that's so unusual as it may look. Bishop d2, bishop to b7, d3. Now what I did was I ran this through my Fritz 13 and analyzed the game. I'm going to turn on the computer here for the score and also analyze the moves. Currently it shows about a half a pawn advantage for white. What the computer had suggested instead of d3 was castle for white and then knight to d6. And he went d6. It secures that square there. It's an important square. The e5 square for black. He does not very develop in his pawns. He doesn't have many center pawns, so he needs to control some squares. I castled. Bishop d7. Bishop d3. That probably wasn't a correct move for me. It felt okay, but the computer suggests that I go d4. And it's going to suggest that for several moves now that I move my pawn to d4 here, which I probably should have done to challenge his center. Needless to say, I went bishop d3. Knight to c6. He's just developing. And again, you can't see, but I'm looking at the computer. And it goes d4 again. It wants me to go d4, d4, d4. I just played just a move to be safe for a while. It's been a while since Mr. Cashman that I'm playing here has beaten me, so he was about due. So I was playing somewhat conservative, which is not my nature, but I was just starting to, sit down and relax into the game. And I went rook to e1. He went knight to f6. He completes his development. All he needs to do is castle now, and he's all set. And again, the computer suggests d4, again, for like 3 moves in a row. I went queen to d2. Probably not a very good move, because what can happen is he can move his knight here and challenge my dark squared bishop, which is really my good bishop. And without thinking, that's what I did. It's funny, it says on here d4 is worth considering. He wants me to move d4 so bad, and that's what he did. He moved knight to g4. Now I'm going to lose my dark squared bishop. I could have probably went bishop here. It would have been a queen trade. It was worth looking at. It's funny how you see these things after, and as I'm looking at the computer here, it says d4 again. So apparently the computer wants me to go d4. Okay, sorry about the small blip there in the video, a little editing going on. So after he went knight to g4, the computer again tells me to go d4, which gives me a thought. Normally I name all my videos kind of a theme of the game into the name, and I guess the only thing I come up with says, what the computer says, I said go d4. So that's probably what I'm going to call this game. I said go d4. About 6 moves in a row it asked me to go d4. I should go d4. I kicked the knight, and he took the dark squared bishop, of course, my good bishop. Now I had gone back and forth on what to recapture with, and I thought maybe the queen, keep my pawns intact, but then I thought about it for a while, and I should take it with my f-pawn. Pretty much the standard rule is if you can take moving your pawn into the center. I can move my pawn here to the famous d4 square, as the computer says. Okay. He castled. Now the computer suggests that I go d4 again. Apparently it likes d4. And so I finally wised up and I went d4. Yeah, finally. And he went bishop to f6, which I was a little surprised on. I thought for sure he would take. I went rook a to d1. Both of my rooks on the center files, and that's what you're supposed to do. I'm in pretty good shape here. His knight can't come in here. Even if he does, I just kick it. His pawn's guarded multiple times. This pawn here, even though it's technically doubled for now, it guards some very key squares here and here. I'm feeling pretty good. Right now it gives a tiny, tiny advantage for black, probably because it has the bishop pair. He went queen to c7. A scenario that the computer found was the move, instead of queen to c7, is knight to a5. And the sequence will go d5, rook e8, bishop to d3. Well, that's an interesting position. It might have been worth doing, I think. Either way, he went queen to c7. And now the computer is suggesting I go d5. And I did go d5. There must be something about the d-pawn, this game the computer dislikes. E takes d5. Now, the computer mentioned I might want to try look at this instead. Instead of e takes d5 for black, knight to d8. Now that's an interesting move. And they suggest rook to b1, which I find fascinating. I can see that the knight will retake on e6. That's a good spot for that knight, by the way. It's kind of a horrid spot now, but it doesn't always have to stay there. I didn't think that was a very good idea, but that's what the computer suggested. I played knight takes d5. He went queen to d8. Now I probably should have played knight takes f6 right away. I went b3 just to shore up my pawn. Just waiting, you know, there's going to be some action on the queen side, it looks like. I just wanted to get things in order. What the computer suggests instead of b3 was knight takes d6, queen takes b2, rook to b1. That's an interesting scenario. It's putting a lot of pressure on his b-pawn. You know, after b3, he went rook e8. And I've got this strange doubled pawn on the e-file now. I wasn't feeling very comfortable with it. I mean, we are technically, material is balanced. I didn't know what to really do to protect that pawn. So I decided to take the bishop, queen, get the queens off the board, but he decided to go queen to e7 instead, which I thought was interesting. I traded. Now I'm looking at the computer. It's a tiny edge for white. I looked at this for quite a while. What do I do here? I mean, do I bring my bishop here to protect? And do I try to protect him at all? And I thought to myself, well, what I can do is I can push my e-pawn to e5. If he takes the knight, I'll take, rook takes, and I can bring my rook down in here and try to do some damage. And that's what I was thinking. So I went e5. He went rook d8. Now I have to admit right now the computer jumped pretty good. I'm about a pawn and a half up in score. What it suggested instead of rook to d8 for black is knight takes, rook to d6, just what I wanted to do to put pressure on the pawn. Now what I should have done, excuse me, what I should have done is played rook takes d8. I should have played rook to d8. Sorry about the little blip there, little edit in the video. After rook to d8, knight takes d8, rook to d1. And of course I'm threatening mate. He has to move. And I don't know what I was thinking. I'm trying to remember how I thought about this. But instead of rook to d8, I went bishop to d3. Which, not a very good move at all. He, of course, doubled up his rooks. Naturally. The computer also just suggests instead of that, if he had taken the pawn there, knight takes, king to f8, knight to f3. That's not too good for black since he loses a piece. After rook e to d7, I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. So I move my bishop back. Incredibly wasted move. The computer suggests instead I should have went bishop to c2, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, bishop takes, king f8. It kind of worked out the same after I went bishop to e2. He played rook takes d1. I took. He took. I took back with a bishop. And that doubled pawn now it's okay for now. It's on a dark square. The bishop can't get to it. My knight's kind of stuck here, babysitting it, to be honest with you. I think maybe given the right opportune moment, I'll give it up, or give it back, I should say, would be more accurate. He went king to f8. I went king to f2. He went king to e7. And I thought about this for a while. I said maybe I'll bring my king up here and here, guard that pawn. Maybe bring this pawn up. I'll be controlling a lot of center squares. I may be better off than I thought. Looking at the computer, I'm about 3/4 of a pawn up. Is very tight. Anyway, I went king to g3. Go along with my plan there. He went h6. Now these minor piece pawn king endings are not easy for me, and I thought about this for a long time. The computer suggests bishop to c2, which makes perfect sense. It gets the bishop back in the game, because unfortunately this poor knight is sitting here guarding, I should say babysitting, this e-pawn. I want king right up. I'm going to try to play a little aggressively. As you can see, if I move this pawn here, I don't want his black knight to get here. So this knight's going to have to guard this square. So I'm kind of stuck, even though I'm a pawn up. If you look at the score, it's actually a small advantage for black currently. He went king to e6. He's bringing his king right up. As we all know, kings are very, very good attacking pieces in the endgame. Computer suggests a4, which I thought about. And I looked at this position for a while. I figured I'll get my pawns up. I'm going to guard some squares here. I'm going to move my pawn here, get my pawn here. Maybe start, squeeze him a little bit. Move my light squared bishop here. Apply some pressure. And I went g4 to do that. And as I did that, I thought to myself, this game is pretty tight. I can go either way if one of us makes a mistake. We both played fairly okay. I mean, there's nothing really majorly wrong. It wasn't that exciting of a game, but it was an okay game. And I asked the gentleman for a draw at this point. And he sat there about 10-12 minutes, which is a long time because these games are, in the championship, game 75. And for those of you that don't know, that means each side has 75 minutes on their clock. Now, I allow, if you have a digital clock, to have a 5-second delay as well. The clock will delay 5 seconds before it starts clicking off your time. And just as I moved g4, I looked up and I offered him a draw. And he sat there for about 10-12 minutes, which is a long time when it's only game 75. And I wandered around a little bit looking at the other games, talking to some of the spectators that were watching. And he looked up and I walked over and he agreed. And so we drew. Steve's an old nemesis of mine, and I'm an old nemesis of his. We're probably both afraid that one of us was going to make a mistake. Frankly, I think it is a drawn game. I'm looking at the computer now. It's about a half a point, a half a pawn, half a point for black. The computer's just going on its own now. Anyway, that's the game. There's one more round to go. That's a pretty exciting round for me. What happened was, because of the number of people in the lower section, there were only 5 of us. The last round, I had to play the same player as I played in the first round. And that was the highest rated player in the section. He was almost 1,600. The section is under 1,700. And I beat him the first game, but he's a pretty good player, and he's the highest rated player in the section. So I had to play him in round 6. And that was a pretty exciting game for me, knowing that if I won this game, I would win first place clear with no tie break. Last year in the reserve section, I tied for first, and I beat out Dr. Dreher. He's a dentist here locally. He's a pretty good guy, good player, and I beat him out on tie breaks for the first place trophy. And so this year I wanted to see if I could win it clean. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And I want you to remember, folks, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And remember, as the computer said, play D4. Talk to you later, folks. Or I should say, see you later, folks. Bye-bye.
If you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And it is for the players. It's not just a game. A game is Monopoly. A game is, Scrabble. A game is, any video game. This is much different. In fact, a lot of world-class players actually call it sport. And they have Olympiad every 2 years from around the world. It's quite the deal. It's huge. I wish it was bigger in this area, but we're going to try to change that.
Just a few reasons why John Cordisco started the Broome County Chess Championship nearly 4 years ago. Players got together in Binghamton to compete for a big trophy and prize at Cordisco's Chess Center on Shenango Street Saturday.
When you're playing chess on tournament day, you forget about everything else in life, and all you worry about is 32 pieces and 64 squares.
Games run through Sunday with nearly a dozen people competing this weekend. There are 2 categories, open and reserve, for players of different skill levels. Many hope championships like these will bring more people to the game.
There are now ways to play that are kind of high-tech on the internet, but it's really a very old game, and I don't know why it doesn't. I think we just need someone like Fischer to give chess a shot in the arm.
For the younger people, I think that's a great thing because they really have to think, and when they're on Facebook or they're playing their video games and that, it just becomes second nature, but this really makes them think.
But the event means more to Cordisco than just handing out trophies. Every year he holds it in honor of his brother Francis, keeping his memory alive.
My youngest brother, he wasn't a chess player, he was a hockey goalie. He was a good one too, but he passed away a couple of years ago. My parents were pretty emotional when I first did it, and his 2 boys, my nephews, they know about it, and they really appreciate it. It's pretty cool. It's just something that I do, to honor him. And it's sad in a way, but it also isn't, too, that he still carries on.
Building blocks of a tradition that means so much to so many in the Southern Tier, and one that Cordisco hopes will make chess big again. In Binghamton, Elise McGalanis.